I've got a really good case. Our client is a company called Best Boots, and this is an L.E.K case. So we're going to find a lot of similarities to McKinsey's style, solid math, some really good, insights that I'm looking for. But overall, a little bit less directed by me, a little bit more directed by you. So please make sure you're leading me through the case.
Absolutely.
Awesome. If you're ready, we'll go for it.
Let's go for it. Whenever you are.
Our client is Best Boots, an American footwear company with over $1 billion in revenue. The majority of their volume comes from selling boots to various segments of clients. The market is mostly comprised of Best Boots and 3 other competitors. There are different types of boots being sold in the market. Work and casual are the most common. There are other specialty categories, though, like field boots, hunting boots, and winter boots. Best Boots currently does play across all 5 segments. A few years ago, one of Best Boots' competitors, Comfy Shoes, launched a line of very aggressively priced work boots, specifically targeting the blue-collar segment. The success of Comfy Shoes' new product has caused Best Boots management to consider their position in work boots. Specifically, Best Boots' work boots segment has underperformed. Given limited resources, management must decide whether to focus on competing with Comfy Shoes or focus their resources on the casual boot segment.
Okay, perfect. So just to make sure I've got all of that information down. It looks like today our client is Best Boots. They are a footwear manufacturer in America. They generated over $1 billion of revenue last year, you said. Mm-hmm. They compete with 3 other main competitors in the market. We can assume there's some other competitors here and there, but those are the main 4. They make work and casual boots, but they also have a few other specialties. Can I assume that we're just focusing on the work and casual boots today?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, they also compete in all the other 5 segments. Now, Comfy Shoes, one of the other 3 competitors, has launched an aggressively priced boots, competing in the blue collar section in the work boots, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And we want to focus on, do we compete with them or do we step back and focus our efforts elsewhere?
Exactly.
Great. Okay. One other question, just in terms of the actual scope of this, we are focusing on just America, correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, I'm ready to take a few minutes if it's okay.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay. So I'd love to walk you through my thoughts. The way I've looked at this, I've put it into 3 buckets. Market, customer, and financials.
Great.
I think the most important is probably going to be somewhere in between market and customer. I'm going to start with customer just because that's who we're selling to. And I think that when it comes to a new dominant player, like I like to think of the iPhone coming in, right? That's like a big changing thing. And if this is an aggressively priced boot and a lot of people are flocking towards it, it'd be really interesting to look at the customer preferences, maybe their price sensitivity, and other factors that might influence their behavior in terms of whether they would buy us or the competitor's product. In terms of the market, I think it's just looking at macroeconomic trends. So if people are on average starting to buy more work boots or buy less work boots, or maybe buy more casual boots or something like that. Also looking at the competitors. So if Comfy Boots or Comfy Shoes is launching an aggressively priced boot, we're not the only company looking at that. There's other companies and maybe they're going to join in too. And all of a sudden it's going to be a bloodbath of all different competitors. Also looking at innovation. Is there something that Comfy Shoes is doing that we're not, or something that we can do that they're not? And then both of those kind of play into how can we win? Are we playing this market just to compete, or are we playing to win? And the strategy behind that. And lastly, the financials. So the cost of actually pursuing this, I'm assuming we're going to have to invest a little bit more money. Maybe we have to invest in some new machinery. The cost if we leave it. So perhaps if we leave them and they dominate in the work boots and we lose market share there, maybe they start coming after casual boots. So that's one thing to consider. And then lastly, just the cost of distributing and the marketing efforts of either of these options.
Fantastic.
And I know that you want me to kind of take the lead on this. So
Sure.
Let's go ahead and let's maybe dive into customer if we have any information there in terms of customer preferences. And if not, I'm happy to jump into the market.
Awesome. So I like that you want to look at the customer, and I think we are going to get a chance to take a look at the customer. Great. But I actually have some exhibits that include both, interestingly.
That's even better.
I know. Everything you ever hoped for and more, right? So I'm going to give you both of these exhibits, And what I'd love first is for you to tell me what you're going to do, and then I'd love for you to walk through actually the details of everything's in there. Yep, there you go.
Okay, so let's start with Exhibit 1. This looks like it's a breakdown of blue collar, white collar, and student. So they must be the three main demographics that we're concerned with. And we're looking at basically the frequency, the price they're paying, and the total addressable market. Before we move on to Exhibit 2 and look at that, I just want to make sure that top row of percentage that bought work boots, are we talking out of the addressable market, how many people would actually buy work boots? Or what is because I noticed it also adds up to 100. So I'm wondering, is that just the percentage of our customers or the market?
Yeah, so we're looking at a market view here.
Okay, great. And then Exhibit 2, we're looking at the average number of pairs of work boots bought in a year and also casual boots. So just kind of the frequency there in terms of if they purchase, how many they actually purchase.
Correct.
Okay, so in terms of what I'd want to do with this information, it'd be really interesting to maybe just actually size the market in dollars. So looking at the addressable market, multiplied by the percentage that would buy work boots and casual boots, we can break it down into work boots and then to casual boots. And then the subcategories within it of blue collar, white collar, and student. And then multiplying those as well as the price that they're paying, as well as not forgetting to include down here how many they're actually buying. For most of them, it looks like it's one, but for blue collar, we just got to remember to double that number.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna dive into the math in a bit. Sorry.
Okay. Before you do that, what do you think we're going to find? Just tell me the gut sense when you look at these numbers at their face before we do any calculations.
Blue collar and work boots look like they're going to be not only costing more, but they look like there's going to be more quantity there. So I'm imagining the market size for blue collar work boots is going to be bigger than most of the other markets.
Okay.
And I would even maybe extrapolate that to the market size for just work boots is bigger than casual boots.
Great.
But I'm excited to dive into this and justify.
So the way that we really want to think about this is the work boot market versus the casual boot market, broken down by the different users. So if you can do the calculations and set them up that way, that'd be helpful.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to start with the work boot just because, in my opinion, I think that's going to be more prevalent.
Great.
And then we can go into supporting data with the casual.
Go ahead.
So for the work boot market, I'd like to segment it into blue collar, white collar, and student. And we know here that the total addressable market for blue collar is 10 million. The total addressable market for white collar is 12 million. And students is 7 million. We also know, now that we've got the total addressable market, we know what percentage of them are actually going to buy work boots. So for blue collar, it's 60%. For white collar, it's 25%. And for student, it's 15%. And so once we know of the total market, how many people are buying it, now we need to know how much they're actually going to pay for a work boot. So that's great. Here we've got $140. Here we have $130. And here we have $110. Once we've got those information, we just need to remember to include in Exhibit 2 how many they're buying. So, and I'm going to do this market size in 1 year timeline, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So for blue collar, it's going to be 2, and the others it's going to be 1. So now I'm just going to chain multiply all of them and then get our answer for that. And then we can go ahead and add it up in the bottom for our total market. So in terms of blue collar work boots, we have 10 million. 60% of them are going to buy work boots. So that's 6 million. We also know that they're going to pay $140. So I'm just going to come down here and do 140 multiplied by 6 million. So we know that 100 by 6 million would be 600 million. And then 40 by 6 million would be 4 times 6, which is 24. So 240 million. It's going to be 840 million. But we have to remember that they're going to buy 2. So we're doubling that for 1.68 million. Billion, sorry.
There we go.
Good catch. For white collar, we've got 12 million multiplied by 25%. Well, half of 12 million is 6 million. Half of that's 3 million. So we've got 3 million people actually buying. They're all going to pay $130. So that's going to be $390 million. And they're just going to buy one. So we have $390 million. When we look at students, we have 7 million and only 15% of them are going to buy work boots. So 7 million multiplied by 15%, that's going to be 700,000 plus 350,000 for a total of 1.05 million people. Now they're going to spend $110. So if they were to spend $100, it would be 10.5 million. And if they would spend the $100, then it would be 105 million. So we can add those two numbers up to 115.5 million. And before we add up the numbers, I've already noticed that, as we predicted, blue-collar work boots are by far the dominating factor, at least in the work boot market. So going up to add those up, we have 1.68 billion plus 0.39 billion plus 0.115 billion. So adding those up, we have 2.185 billion. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and let's move on to the casual boots.
Sounds good.
So in this, we have the same breakdown of blue collar, white collar, student. We know that the addressable market is the same. Just want to make sure I've got this all written down. And then now when it goes to the actual percentage that bought boots, it's a little bit lower in this market. So we have 20% for blue collar. We have 35% for white collar, but we do have 55% for students. In terms of how much they're going to pay, it's going to be 120 for blue collar. It's going to be 110 for white collar, and it's going to be 100 for students. So now we also know that the frequency on here is just one. I'm just going to leave that out because it's not going to affect it. Then now let's just go ahead and add it up again.
Great.
So 10 million blue collar people multiplied by 20% is 2 million. 2 million multiplied by the $120 is 240 million. When it comes to the white collar, we have 12 million multiplied by 35%. So if we do 10%, that'd be 1.2 million multiplied by 3 is 3.6 million, plus the 5%, which is 0.6 million for 4.2 million. We have 4.2 million people spending $110. So 4.2 million multiplied by 10 is 42 million. And then also 420 million for the multiplied by 100 for 462 million. So now we have our students. That's going to be 7 million, and that's going to be by 55%. So 50% of 7 million is 700,000. And we also actually did this calculation earlier, and it was 1.05 million. So I'm just gonna cut it out there. And once we have our 1.05 million, we need to multiply that by 100, and that is super easy.
So 1.05 million is 55%.
That's actually completely wrong. Thank you. Sorry, I did 10% on that. So good job I didn't cut out the calculation. So half of 7 million is 3.5 million. And then we're going to take 10% of that number, which is 0.35 million for 3.85 million.
Makes more sense.
And then we multiply that by 100 for 385 million. Now, again, before we add them up, doing the same thing we did last time, it's actually the white collar part of the market segment that's making the most revenue here. But they're all pretty similar, but they're all a little bit lower other than the student work boots, which makes sense. You're not having a lot of students in clunky work boots.
Correct.
Let's go ahead and add these up. We have 240 million we have 462 million, we have 385 million. And if we add those up, we have we have 1.087 billion. So pretty much exactly as predicted, the work boot segment of the market is almost double the casual market. And really, in particular, the blue collar segment of the work boots market is going to be the most prevalent. And I know that, just kind of tying it back to the beginning here, I know Comfy Shoes is actually targeting the blue collar work boots with an aggressively priced shoe. So that makes sense, right? They're really trying to get a piece of that pie. Moving on from this, it'd be interesting to maybe know a little bit about our distribution channels or how we could compete with them. I'd love to, if we did have information in terms of who are we actually selling to in blue collar? Is it business to customer, or is it B2B versus what are they doing as well?
Let me ask you one question here that's not related specifically to where we're going, but
Yeah.
How did we get here? How did we not focus on the work boots market? What do you think would have happened here to kind of get us to where we are? Sometimes it's important to understand that before we move on to where we should go.
I think a big thing that's possible here is changing in consumer preferences or in terms of market trends. If casual work boots were maybe up and coming a few years ago, we really dove into that. We might have just neglected to look at the work boot market. Maybe we haven't been paying attention to our customers as much, or our competitors. And so I think the biggest thing that would come to my mind would be just a massive uptrend in this, or maybe the price has just increased as well. And so what was once a not very attractive market has now become really attractive.
Love it. So now we need to really understand how Best Boots is falling behind Comfy Shoes in the work boot segment. Yeah. You kind of developed a couple of ideas of why that could be the case, how we could have missed it. I also have an exhibit to kind of add to what you were just talking about. At the end of this exhibit, I'd really like for you to give me a summary of some of your different ideas, including what you can see here.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at this, it looks like, it's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. It's a breakdown in terms of where we're actually selling our boots, also where Comfy Shoes is selling theirs. And the first thing I'm noticing is we don't sell to employer bought or assigned at all, but Comfy Shoes makes up 40% of their sales in that category. So am I right to assume that that's something like if you're working at a construction site or a fast food restaurant and they require you to wear boots, they maybe have a contract or some sort of handshake agreement with Comfy Shoes saying, we're going to supply them with your boots.
Exactly.
Okay. And that makes sense, right? In a work boot environment, that would be the first thing I would go. You're not going to go and peruse a shopping catalog for some nice looking work boots. You're going to get what does the job. We do sell some in general shoe stores and athletic stores and also discount stores. But again, I imagine that 40% of their sales, is this by dollars or units? Do we know?
This one is the percentage of total unit sales.
Of unit sales, yeah. Okay. And that makes sense. I think the biggest thing there would be to try and enter the employer bought assigned if we were to go forth with this. Did you want me to come up with some solutions in terms of what we want to do with this?
Totally. I mean, just in general, I think we're looking to understand how and why we haven't competed, and then whether or not we should, tying it back to the bigger picture.
Yeah, so I'm thinking we probably just don't have the relationships with those discount stores. Because obviously one thing that you can tell from this graph is where we are compared to them. Okay. But one thing we can't see is what their actual total sales are. And maybe that 40% of their employer bought assigned is bigger than the 100% of our sales, right? I don't know the exact information on that. Yeah. But it'd be really interesting to see actually their 40% is making all the revenue in the world compared to our.
Let's assume that they are a smaller player in the market.
A smaller player. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're actually, that would look a little bit different if we kind of had that. I think that's the reason behind that would definitely be close to the fact that we don't have those previous relationships. We haven't formed those connections. We haven't really tried to enter that. And we've really just been, it seems like we've kind of built off of this casual boot, and we've maybe recently introduced our work boots, and so we're saying, oh, we'll sell them in the same places we sell our casual boots, but really it's a completely different market and you need to be selling it in different places.
Okay, fantastic. Good. Anything else here? Anything outside of what's in Exhibit 3?
Yeah. I think when it comes to selling the work boots, I would imagine the consumer preferences are probably a little bit different in terms of when I shop for shoes, I want something that looks nice, I want something that feels comfy, and that's about it. Whereas I would imagine for work boots, is this going to protect me when a brick falls on my foot, or is this going to actually just hold up and survive the wear and tear? Not necessarily what's looking pretty. So just making sure that we are actually addressing the consumers at hand and not just trying to again, play to play. We want to play to win this, and we want to be trying to dominate this.
Great. Awesome. Okay. We're ready for a final recommendation. We're really looking for guidance. Should we double down in the casual shoe segment, or should we enter the work boot segment?
I think we should double down. And the reason being is because as we looked at in the exhibit 1 and 2, the work boot market is double the size of the casual boot market, which is primarily what we seem to be playing in right now. And so I think we should go forth with that. Now,
so when I said double down, I meant stay where we are. You're saying stay in casuals,
not double down with that, but double down our efforts to really go for work boots.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
From what I understood, it was we're in the market. We're not really. We're kind of staying
we have
afloat.
a product in the market.
I think we should double down that, and I think we should really appeal to the customers in that work boot segment, just because it's so much bigger and it's double the size, right? And so there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think that especially after looking at Exhibit 3, if we can start targeting employer bought assigned and maybe other areas and focus our efforts there, I think we have the opportunity to really compete, especially if we can differentiate ourselves. And I think some next steps with that is maybe even some consumer surveys in terms of actually figuring out those consumer preferences so that we can really focus on what they want.
Fantastic. Anything else that you would want to do based on the insights in the case?
Let me think. I think also we seem to have got ourselves in this place in the first hand because we focused too much on one. Don't lose the attention on casual boots, right? We should maintain both efforts and not just go one-on-one. Otherwise, we're just going to be flip-flopping for eternity.
Awesome. Okay, Ed, talk me through 30 seconds to a minute of your own feedback on yourself. A couple of good exhibits in there. What did you think?
So I love a good set of exhibits. It's not always that you get more than one or two. So I really enjoyed going over those. I thought it was a really interesting case, and I felt that I did a decent job at maintaining structure. I think there was definitely room for improvement, and obviously you can give feedback for that in a second. But I think the biggest thing with this was it was both really fun, but also a little bit daunting in that, especially when it's not a clear direction, combined with a bit more interviewee led, it's quite difficult thinking, I've got all this data, I've kind of figured out the numbers I want to, but I don't really know where to push it and which avenues to explore first.
How do you know what to do? Even if the market's bigger, do you still go into it? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's good. Look, I think overall you did a really good job. I thought strong performance. I would have, of course, hired you at the end of it. I thought that your opening was very strong. You were very clear about everything that kind of came out of it. It felt like you had a pretty good grasp of what was going on. Maybe a good clarifying question here would have been whether or not we had a retail or wholesale focus. Yes. There are some places like UGG, for example, right, that has a direct to consumer retail presence, and so understanding that might have helped us a little bit. But I didn't feel like there was anything really lacking in your core focus. I think that you had some hypotheses. You knew what numbers you wanted. We tested those hypotheses. Some of them panned out. You thought the customer was more important. Ended up that the market was more important. Hard to say actually. Is it blue collar or work boots that's more important, right? You were kind of thinking about that in the two matrices. You really led off with a strong structure, telling me that you had 3 categories, telling me what the categories were. I felt like from there you could have done anything you wanted. I would have loved to have seen you keep that numbered structure as you were talking through each one of your areas.
Yes.
And I also, though, just really do want to call out, you highlighted in your structure that there are some maybe changing trends on work boots. And I felt like your layering and that was very, very good. Your math was solid, though there was that one mistake in there. But it was, I think you would have caught it for expediency. We've already gone through a lot of math. And I helped you because I did not feel like math was a flaw. Right. I would have made you flounder if I thought that math was an issue for you. It's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? And so then also good insights on, kind of on the boots area. A lot of them, my favorite thing of the whole case is that at the beginning, before you did the math, you told me what the answer was going to be.
Yeah.
And you did that consistently, even when you got the next exhibit, even before you got the numbers, you kind of, were really, really strong on leading me through with a hypothesis. So great job on that. On your kind of creative insights at the end, I wanted more structure. That was kind of the one place where the structure kind of lagged. And so if this was a level 1 case, I would have said, okay, we'll pass Ed on, but we'll see in the second round. So really, just honing that in because you were so strong up until that point. Just don't leave any questions for me for any doubt. And there were some other things that I felt like we were so focused on, right? Should we go into work boots? Yes. You called out one thing that I really liked, which was, do we have a good boot? But also there could have been, are we marketing the boots appropriately? Are we thinking about tailoring boots to fashion trends, right? Like what are some of the ways that we can leverage things that I know about fashion, which I don't know everything, but I know some things, into how else we could think about doing this. And the channel became such a big focus that I wanted you to be a little bit more broad. And then in your conclusion, I would just love to have a little bit more of a robust, hey, here's what else we could do. Because like you said, where do we go with all of this data? Tell me some more. Like, what else do you want to know before we spend, let's call it, right, we're $1 billion company, before we spend $100 million pursuing this segment? Like, there's clearly more things that we'd want to know. So I felt like there was just a little bit of a real world application for, hey, in order to go spend this money, we'd really want to do that. Overall, though, very good job.
Thank you.